Test. It's summer 2021 as of recording this. It's the harshest economic period in the last 10 years or so. Everybody's broke, out of work, or both. The flat globe is so hot, half of it is on fire. The police brutality protests of the last year have either amounted to nothing or worse treatment of racial minorities, and so on and so forth. You understand how bad shit is. So let's watch an anime where shit isn't much better. As any other weird internet human obsessed with anime, I had a period of time where I thought about serial experiments laying an unhealthy amount in my life. That period of time has yet to end, by the way. So of course, after finishing it, I went to see what else the creators made. Back in the day, 2016, I heard about the PS1 game, which I only recently started due to the browser version, and I heard about Nia Under 7. At the time, I was a massive anime snob and thought the idea of an anime that seemed to be just a slice-of-life comedy wasn't worth my time. That said, I was still curious as it was made by the same people. Plus, my local FYE had Volume 4 on DVD for several years in a row, so I bought it. I thought it looked cool. I never watched it because it was the last 3 episodes, but I felt bad for it being on the shelf for so long. It was like $2, and maybe it would remind me to see the rest of the show at some point. FYE would later have another copy of Volume 4 on its shelves. Who the fuck keeps giving away the last volume? And, well, here I am. I've seen the show several times, I have all the DVDs, and, well, it's in my top 10 now. Before we get into seeing what Nia is about, I want to show you the thing everybody seems to not get, which is its comedy. It's an ironic sort of comedy that uses typically bad jokes in a way that's funny for how poorly structured it is. There's fart and poop jokes, there's obscure references to old Japanese sodas, old sound goofy effects. Why did I write it like that?
Alright, she's going to make this difficult.
All kinds of jokes that aren't designed to be laughed at for their serious ability to be funny, but the fact that they're not funny. In the DVD extras, it's defined as hetare comedy, which they translate as lame comedy. Jokes that aren't all that funny. In a way, semi-reminiscent of a lot of memes within the past few years. The show's hetare comedy gives it a uniquely weird feeling as many jokes go over people's heads. I seriously love the DVDs for having footnotes in the extras. It gives a better impression of what's supposed to be going on. Anyway, the weirdness of the show is in service of making it feel alien, which I don't know if you noticed, but that's kind of the point of the show. The plot of Nia Under 7 is hard to describe. Sure, it's a slice-of-life comedy about Mayuko, incapable of getting into college, trying not to starve to death living in a rundown and broke bathhouse with her roommate, Nia, an alien in the lowest of the caste system, who is always causing trouble and being discriminated against. While Nia is more of a comedy than lain, and Wikipedia calls it lighter in tone, it's still a depressing concept and has a lot of melancholy episodes, especially towards the end. The tagline of the show, or I guess, domestic poor animation, describes the setup of the show accurately. The characters are broke. There's always a struggle to eat or pay for the dilapidated bathhouse. The acquaintances keep coming over and causing trouble, and all the while Nia acts like a little shit. But to call the show a slice-of-life comedy just because of the slice-of-life comedy aspects would be reductive. The mostly episodic plots revolve around, most of the time anyway, trying to make sure everybody has enough money to not starve. Trying to get a free way to stay cool in the heat, trying to get customers to come in the bathhouse so it doesn't close, so on and so forth. All things that, while done in a very silly way, illustrate the constant struggle of the poverty-stricken to just maintain their status quo. Is the show just suffering under the heavy boot of capitalism all the time? Well, no, of course not. The cast of characters know how to have fun. And of course, there's more themes than money sucks. Take, for example, Nia's alien comrades. Even if they have it better off than her, they're still immigrants to Japan. They're not really doing especially amazing. There's one famous alien who is highlighted as an alien who has it good, but as soon as the public realizes he's not a high-caste alien, they kick him to the curb.
汚れてるのは世間の方だ。プラスだ、アンダーだって形だけの階級に踊らされて。 結局そんな肩書き全部消えそうなんだよ。
The possibly weirdest choice the show makes is that there are some aliens that have an appearance, you could say racially stereotyped or culturally appropriated of other Earth cultures, like India and China. When I first saw this, I wonder if they were going for non-Japanese people are weird like they're from another planet, but I think it's more complicated than that. I see it as these aliens coming to Earth to try to be like Earthlings, trying to adapt to their newfound homes, but not quite doing it the way you'd expect because, well, they're new to this, they don't know what they're doing. They take from stereotypes of Earth cultures because they found an affinity in the cultures of their new home. At the same time, I think there is a sort of non-Japanese people are like from another planet, but not in an icky gaijin kind of way, more of a humans have a lot of interesting differences between cultures despite being the same species. Each episode concludes with a little factoid about India from a real-life Indian individual, and isn't played as a wow look how fucked up the world is outside of Japan. It's a real cultural connection, with some jokes thrown in because it's a comedy show. Of course, this is totally lost, as these sections are sometimes unsubtitled, but that's America's fault, not the creators. This is the same people who worked on Lain. Of course, you couldn't tell that by just watching it. But they understood the global connotations of the power of technology. Television, much like the internet, is a highway of information that can be spread around the globe. I mean, hell, I'm an American watching a Japanese animated series from my bedroom. That's fucking cool. Nia Under 7 is very much trying to be entertainment as well as a cultural melting pot. The show is stuffed with Japanese life. The Japanese bathhouse is just one example. But among all of this Japanese stuff, there is life from beyond. Genzo Someya, Mayuko's childhood friend, has dreadlocks, not a common Japanese hairstyle. Despite being a very Japanese boy, he has an American fashion sense for the time. Remember, this was Y2K. He's essentially doing the same thing the aliens are doing, taking cultural symbols from elsewhere on Earth and using them as personal expression. While he isn't as stereotypical, he does get confused for a Yankee. Throughout the show, stereotypes are played into quite heavily. This may push some people away who think it's crass or racist, but considering how empathetic I consider the rest of the show, I didn't take this as a sign of ill intent. Keep in mind I'm white, but I'm trying. The characters play into negative stereotypes as well as positive ones, but in the end, they're shown to be more than that. For example, Karna. She plays into the stereotype Japan commonly has, where she's a China fanatic who considers herself superior to other aliens. However, her antenna keeps picking up radio and phone call signals. How wacky. Despite this, it's shown she has a complex over how she's seen by others. She wants to be seen as a great person, so she downplays her flaws. And she gets angry when they're brought up, and overemphasizes her good points. Also, as an alien, she's still discriminated against, and she wants to get aliens to a higher status in Earth society.
As a top elite from Enohana, can you please give us your thoughts on how to improve alien social status?
Spicier curry?
She also has a crush on a guy who doesn't notice her, and her Chinese stereotype never comes into this. She's cool. One of my favorite ways in which the show illustrates its opposition to stereotyping is the opening song, or the opening animation. There's a brief shot of Nia with Under 7 written all over her, and she angrily tries to block it out. It's a really nice metaphor for rejecting discriminatory labels. Anyway, aliens culturally appropriating aren't the only stereotypes. While definitely not the same level, Mayuko in one episode is faced with an invitation to... Modern anime would call it a mixer, but this one uses the term Gokon. I guess it's just a difference of generation. The other girls invited to this are surprised at her appearance, as they assumed she wouldn't be into that, seemingly for no reason. And they're right, but not because she doesn't want to. She can't afford makeup and good clothes, and deals with a form of self-shame brought on to her by her poverty. So she loses the courage to go. In her sadness, after deciding not to go, she lashes out at Nia and says some fairly racist shit against her. In the dub, it's not as explicit, but... Americans. She's taken aback at her own words. One could easily interpret this as Mayuko is secretly racist, but I think it's more along the lines of Mayuko was so frustrated with her position she couldn't really bottle it in anymore, and who is an easier target to lash at? Advertising companies that push for a certain standard of beauty, or someone who's down in the dirt with her? While Mayuko isn't any nicer to Nia after they kinda sorta make up, it's played as Nia isn't being hurt by what Mayuko says, because Mayuko doesn't have any power herself. It's a pessimistic premise, but one that reflects the reality of our capitalist nightmare. Speaking of being depressing, the show doesn't really have that much of a happy ending. Everybody's still poor, Nia's still shit, and Mayuko isn't in college, so on and so forth. But a happy ending would just cheapen the feelings of suffering and wouldn't be a very accurate portrayal of how poverty works. Plus, wait a second, who did I just mention? Nia? Wait, isn't the show supposed to be about her? The funny thing is, even though Lain is about Lain, Nia isn't all that much about Nia. It's about the people Nia knows and how Nia is different from them. Mayuko is more of a main character, but why then is the show called Nia Under 7, literally Nia's name and her caste status? While I could very simply talk about how Nia is an important character to Mayuko and all that sort of shit, I'm gonna shift gears to the manga really quick. This isn't the only time Abe has tried to make a story about an alien roommate, but this is the only one people actually know about. The alien roommate thing is fascinating in that, yeah, it would be pretty bad to have a roommate from hell, but what about from another planet? Ugh. Well, that's the basis of this story. Mayuko is trying to get by with this weird alien kid freeloading and making her poverty-stricken life even harder. Nia has a much more active role in the manga where she tags along with Mayuko everywhere, and begs for free food from Mayuko, who has to pay for it. And a lot of scenes in the anime, which are just Mayuko, in the manga have Nia hanging around. While, yeah, Nia is the spotlight goofball character, her actions still tie in with some sort of theme. Money, food, being embarrassed about not having the money to get the food around someone who does. As someone who grew up going to an elementary school in the poorest part of my county, it meant I got to see this kind of thing firsthand. Not everyone could afford lunch at school, and programs that gave kids free food who couldn't afford it were widely used. I don't want to give a whole lot of details on these poor kids' lives, and I don't want to speak for them and all that, but the fact that some of these kids might not have been able to eat food at all during the day if it weren't for what was essentially shitty school food, it breaks my heart, and it's really amazing to see a show actually bring up that kind of thing. Nia Under 7 is hopefully, obviously, empathetic of how unfair it is to be unable to eat. Nia and Mayuko, in the first few pages, argue over how to spend Mayuko's savings. Mayuko wants to invest it into education so she can one day get a job that pays real money, but Nia is starving and wants to use it to buy food, but she eventually changes her mind and just wants to get some sugar because she hasn't had anything that tastes good in forever. This is a genuine situation people get into. Do I spend the money for my future and starve? Do I eat now and risk my future, or do I get myself something fun and risk both now and later? Eventually, the two talk about how Mayuko ditched her country accent for her city accent, which is something teachers in my schools did to appear more professional, despite living in an area where everyone talked with a country accent. After this, Nia tried to order a snow cone, shaved ice, however you want to call it, but the vendor said he wouldn't serve Nia because she's an alien. I know it's a bit out of my league to talk about racism, being white and not really being as personally invested with this as the other topics, but refusal of service towards certain types of people still happens in America, and I can only imagine how bad it is in Japan. So the fact that it was brought up in this manga is, again, illustrating how it highlights these kinds of issues. After the shaved ice guy refuses to serve Nia, Mayuko buys one and smugly says, "You have no problem serving a human, right?" And then obviously gives it to Nia immediately after. Well, it's a bit weird to give money to the guy who just discriminated against your roommate. Mayuko got Nia the sweet treat she asked for. Mayuko gives up some of her tuition money, partially out of spite and partially out of empathy for Nia. The manga is unfortunately hard to find in completion in English, if it's even possible to do so. I know I haven't found it. And while the art book of Nia, while it looks pretty cool, isn't translated to English as far as I'm aware. Even after Nia's global communication effort, even 21 years after the fact, when we have come so much farther, we still haven't gone as far as we'd like. Manga is also not as cleanly polished as the anime, which makes sense. The manga was initially a doujin, and even after serialization, Abe's style is rough, mostly from him being new to drawing at the time. But it's really adorable. That goes with the story of being in bad circumstances. The entire series really runs with a trash aesthetic that I adore. In the end, it doesn't matter if there's a happy ending to this little event or to the anime as a whole. What matters is that along the way, you helped each other out in these tough times. And if you doubt me for the series not being empathetic enough or it's secretly racist, in the first chapter of the manga, Mayuko admits that blaming affirmative action for her not getting into college is fucked up. So that's right, I'm based, you're cringe, Nia Under 7 is good. In all seriousness, the Nia Under 7 anime can be vague with its messaging, which I don't think is bad or anything. It's a good time and fun to try and determine the meaning of various things. The manga is somewhat more obvious about the theming, assumedly because the anime deviates somewhat from the manga in terms of story and events. Oh, wait. I can't just be done yet. I haven't talked about Chiaki-chan yet. Mayuko's first friend, or second friend if you count Nia, is Chiaki, a fellow cram school student who is obsessed with aliens. I have to bring this up, but Chiaki was, allegedly anyway, I found no sources backing this up, named after Chiaki J. Konaka, the lead writer of Serial Experiments Lain and later Digimon Tamers. A couple people, and I genuinely mean a couple of people. This is not a mainstream talking point, but I feel like it might become one if the rumor isn't addressed. Anyway, a couple of people theorized that Chiaki and Niea was made as a means of laughing at the real-life Chiaki, like, haha, look at this stupid conspiracy theorist. But this can't be true. Chiaki and Niea isn't a conspiracy theorist, she's an alien nerd, an otaku. And Chiaki in real life didn't get into conspiracy nonsense until at least 10 years after the show was made. It would also be really weird if Abe made this as a means to laugh at an asshole he didn't like working with, considering he's working with Chiaki right now on an anime adaptation of a manga they worked on together. As far as I can tell, the only inspiration Chiaki J. Konaka has on Chiaki and Niea is her name and that she likes computers. Anyway, Mayuko is frequently thankful Chiaki isn't racist or classist, but she's surprised to see someone who's so enthused about aliens. Something she sees as relatively unnoteworthy due to how normal it is to her. You could view Chiaki as a fusion between a foreign culture otaku and well-meaning ally. She talks about updating her homepage about alien activities, she's fascinated to meet Niea, and she takes pictures of just about everything Mayuko considers mundane, everyday neighborhood behavior because she lives in the alien district, but she tries to have some genuine respect for the culture and technologies. When she first sees someone using alien tech to heat a bath, she's shocked someone could take it so lightly, and ultimately she's right because the damn thing explodes. She has an interesting mix of unfortunate obsession over foreign people's lives while also trying to treat the culture and history as kindly as possible. She kind of reminds me of American otaku, which is helped by the fact she lived in America for a time. I mean, really, as an American who consumes more Japanese media than American media, as an American who has tried and failed to learn Japanese multiple times just so I could read untranslated manga, as an American who doesn't really know what it's like to be Japanese, as an American who likes this song purely for its absurdity, I assure you, am I treating Japanese people, fellow humans, with respect when I do all this? I'm not trying to over-glorify a culture unlike mine and people who live far away from me, but what if I am by accident? Like, even the term anime is a bit otherizing, isn't it? It's just referring to Japanese animation, cartoons. It's the same fucking shit, just from different places. That kind of anxiety doesn't occur to most people, like Chiaki, who will just say to an alien's face she's a collection of mini UFOs. Chiaki's one of those characters that I like a lot because she represents passion, even if it's misguided. I'm hoping that the fact that Chiaki isn't written villainously and that she's written by a Japanese author makes my point have some legitimacy, that she isn't coming from a malicious place, it's just that her respect can be othering unintentionally. She doesn't appear that often, but her appearance is always very enjoyable. Even disregarding the themes, as a character, Chiaki is fun, she's passionate, she's nice. I guess I should talk about the ending of the show. If you're already interested, then stop here, watch the show, and don't come back. This is just for people who don't want to bother and just have someone on YouTube tell them what to think. Okay, so nobody's gonna watch this bit, but the ending is really fucking weird. Everyone is worried about the bathhouse closing or being bought out, and Niea and the mothership both fuck off separately. Mayuko's watch just breaks down, and summer is over. Time marches on, whether everyone is ready for it or not. A lot of characters comment on how Mayuko is depressed, and Mayuko gets irritated and worried and back again over Niea being gone, all while the others say how free she is for not giving a fuck about anything. The bathhouse staff are stressed out even more than usual. The usual goofy comedy got sad in a very real way. How does it end? Well, Nia comes back and Mayuko is happy again, and in a conversation with Chiaki, she doesn't really know why she was sad or why she's happy now. What? This is a lot to handle at once, I know, and trust me, I could talk about the ending forever. So I just want to go over the basic takeaway. The treasure was the friends we made along the way. Change is good, but scary and not always necessary. And we don't always understand what happens in our life because that's just how life works. There, now you know what to think. Oh, what? You want me to elaborate? You wanted me to just tell you what to think, right? Fine, you big babies. Mayuko is depressed because her situation sucks and she becomes alone when Nia leaves, and with everyone reminding her of Nia, it just makes it worse. Nia comes back, her roommate, her friend, someone she has fun with even if it doesn't look like it's fun on the surface. Bam boom friendship, or gay, up to you. With everything changing in the bathhouse, Mayuko's watch, the mothership, the very season itself, the fireflies, these things are unavoidable and it scares Mayuko. She recognizes later that this isn't cause for alarm. And even then, some things she doesn't have to change. She keeps her watch and just rolls with the dysfunction. And as for what we don't understand, well, Mayuko constantly monologues about not understanding anything.
I don't know.
Like almost every episode.
Is there something in my life that important? I don't know what I am.
And in the last episode, she still doesn't know anything.
私はどうしてあんなに不安だったんだろう
A lesser reviewer would consider this a downside, like, oh, even the main character doesn't know what this show is about. But I think it highlights how we as humans don't understand shit. Let alone on a grand scale, the universe and what happens when we die and stuff like that. We don't know why we as individuals are doing the things we do, or if we do know, we don't know why those elements came to be. Do you know why you're watching this video? Do you know why the reason you probably just came into your head? Do you know why you're almost definitely confused about all this? It's alright. We aren't supposed to know everything. There. You happy? I explained everything for you. So, in conclusion, I said in the beginning this show is about depressing stuff, and it is. But during a lot of the runtime, you don't get the feeling it's about being sad. And all the fucked up situations, and all the weird freakouts, and all the downtime that you spend with these people, you smile a lot. Or at least I did. The characters know how, even in the face of poverty and racism, that having fun is important to keep going. That's why this show is a comedy. That's right, I justified the goofiness, fuck you. You might argue it's not as deep as Lain and therefore not as good, but comparison games don't matter to me. The show is all about sharing empathy between disparaged peoples, a group that doesn't get the spotlight very often in media, or if they do, it's to laugh at them. So this show shows... Why did I write that? This show shows them laughing back. It's surprisingly not as appreciated as Lain, most likely because the slice of life comedy makes people turn their brains off and stop paying attention, and the whole, weird alien cultural appropriation thing. I mean, come on, the DVDs have this little highlight made by the creators of Serial Experiments Lain, but they are drastically different viewing experiences. At least, all but the first DVD did, I guess because they realized they needed to capitalize on a previous, more well-known work after the first DVD with this as the cover. A surprising number of Lain fans either don't know about or don't care about this show, but I care about it as much as I do Lain. I think regardless of if you like Lain or not, you should check it out. I mean, I didn't even talk about Karuchie, Chada's multiple failed businesses, the generational poverty, Mayuko giving up writing stories, the music, the romance, specifically so you would have to go watch it and try and read the manga. I know it's hard to find, but try. That's the message of this video. It's an advertisement for a 21-year-old anime nobody likes. Get owned.